Georg Carl Tänzler, also known as Count Carl von Cosel, was a German-born radiology technologist at the Marine Hospital Service in Key West, Florida. He developed an obsession with a young Cuban-American tuberculosis patient, Elena Helen Milagro de Hoyos, that carried on well after her death. In 1933, almost 2 years after her death, Tanzler removed Hoyos' body from its tomb and lived with the corpse at his home for 7 years until its discovery by Hoyos' relatives and authorities in 1940. Tanzler grew up in the German Empire, but at some point wound up in Australia just prior to the outbreak of World War I. Around 1920, following his return from Germany, Tanzler married Doris Schaefer. Together they had 2 children, Ayesha Tanzler and Clarissa Tanzler, who died of diphtheria. Tanzler emigrated to the United States from Germany in 1926, sailing from Rotterdam on February 6, 1926 to Havana, Cuba. From Cuba, he settled in Zephyrhills, Florida, where his sister had already emigrated and was later joined by his wife and 2 daughters. Leaving his family behind in Zephyrhills in 1927, he took a job as a radiology technician at the U.S. Marine Hospital in Key West, Florida, under the name Carl von Cosel. During his childhood in Germany and later while travelling briefly in Genoa, Italy, Tanzler claimed to have been visited by visions of a dead apparent ancestor, Countess Anna Constantia von Cosel, who revealed the face of his true love, an exotic, dark-haired woman, to him. On April 22, 1930, while working at the Marine Hospital in Key West, Tanzler met Maria Elena Milagro de Hoyos, a local Cuban-American woman who had been brought to the hospital by her mother for an examination. Tanzler immediately recognized her as the beautiful, dark-haired woman that had been revealed to him in his earlier visions. By all accounts, Hoyos was viewed as a local beauty in Key West. Elena was the daughter of a local cigar maker, Francisco Pancho Hoyos, and Aurora Milagro. On February 18, 1926, Elena married Luis Mesa, the son of a Cadrid and Isaac Mesa. Mesa left Elena shortly after she suffered a miscarriage of the couple's child and moved to Miami. Elena was legally married to Mesa at the time of her death. Elena was subsequently diagnosed with tuberculosis, a disease typically fatal at the time and which eventually would claim the lives of almost all of her immediate family. Tanzler, with his self-professed medical knowledge, attempted to cure Elena with a variety of treatments, remedies, X-ray and other medical equipment that were brought to the Hoyos' home. Tanzler also showered Elena with gifts of jewellery and clothing and allegedly professed his love to her, but no evidence has surfaced to show that any of his affection was reciprocated by Elena. Despite Tanzler's best efforts, Elena died of tuberculosis at her parents' home in Key West on October 25, 1931. Tanzler paid for her funeral, and with permission of her family, he then commissioned the construction of an above-ground mausoleum in the Key West Cemetery, which he visited almost every night. One evening in April 1933, Tanzler crept through the cemetery where Elena was buried and removed her body from the mausoleum, carting it through the cemetery after dark on a toy wagon and transported it to his home. He reportedly said that Elena's spirit would come to him when he would sit by her grave and serenade her corpse with a favourite Spanish song. He also said that she would often tell him to take her from the grave. Tanzler attached the corpse's bones together with piano wire and fitted the face with glass eyes. As the skin of the corpse decomposed, Tanzler replaced it with silk cloth soaked in wax and plaster of Paris. As the hair fell out of Elena's decomposing scalp, Tanzler fashioned a wig from her hair, which he had previously obtained from her mother. Tanzler filled the corpse's abdominal and chest cavity with rags to keep the original form, dressed Elena's remains in stockings, jewellery and gloves, and kept the body in his bed. Tanzler also used copious amounts of perfume, disinfectants and preserving agents to mask the odour and forestall the effects of the corpse's decomposition. In October 1940, Elena's sister Florinda heard rumours of Tanzler sleeping with the disinterred body of her sister and confronted Tanzler at his home, where Elena's body was eventually discovered. He was also caught dancing with her corpse in the front of an open window. Florinda notified the authorities and Tanzler was arrested and detained. Tanzler was psychiatrically examined and found mentally competent to stand trial on the charge of wantonly and maliciously destroying a grave and removing a body without authorization. After a preliminary hearing on October 9, 1940 at Monroe County Courthouse in Key West, Tanzler was held to answer on the charge, but the case was eventually dropped and he was released as the statute of limitations for the crime had expired. Shortly after the corpse's discovery by authorities, Elena's body was examined by physicians and pathologists and put on public display at the Dean Lopez funeral home, where it was viewed by as many as 6,800 people. Elena's body was eventually returned to the Key West Cemetery, where the remains were buried in an unmarked grave in a secret location to prevent further tampering. The facts underlying the case and the preliminary hearing drew much interest from the media at the time and created a sensation among the public, both regionally and nationwide. The public mood was generally sympathetic to Tanzler, whom many viewed as an eccentric romantic. Though not reported contemporaneously, research has revealed evidence of Tanzler's necrophilia with Elena's corpse. Two physicians who attended the 1940 autopsy of Elena's remains recalled in 1972 that a vaginal tube had been inserted in the vaginal area of the corpse that allowed for intercourse. Others contend that since no evidence of necrophilia was presented at the 1940 preliminary hearing, and because the physician's proof surfaced in 1972, over 30 years after the case had been dismissed, the necrophilia allegation is questionable. While no existing contemporary photographs of the autopsy or photographs taken at the public display show a tube, the necrophilia claim was repeated by the HBO autopsy program in 1999. In 1944, Tanzler moved to Pasco County, Florida, close to Zephyrus, where he wrote an autobiography that appeared in the pulp publication Fantastic Adventures in 1947. His home was near his wife Doris, who apparently helped to support Tanzler in his later years. Tanzler received United States citizenship in 1950 in Tampa. Separated from his obsession, Tanzler used a death mask to create a life-sized effigy of Elena and lived with it until his death at the age of 75 on July 3rd, 1952. His body was discovered on the floor of his home 3 weeks after his death. He died under the name Carl Tänzler. It has been recounted that Tanzler was found in the arms of Elena's effigy upon discovery of his corpse, but his obituary reported that he died on the floor behind one of his organs. The obituary recounted a metal cylinder on a shelf above a table. In it, wrapped in silken cloth and a robe, was a waxen image. It has been written that Tanzler had the bodies switched and that he died with the real body of Elena. The story of Tanzler and Elena would be reproduced in pulp magazines in the years following his death, with various parties adding new details to the case. An article written by Mickelfender in 1982 tells of how renovation workers found a note allegedly written by Tanzler confessing to having killed Elena by poisoning her, saying, "She died because I gave this to her mercifully. I mixed the root of wolfsbane with aconite diluted. It was palatable, and my loved one departed this miserable world on October 25th, 1931. Suffer no more, sweet Elena. I have sent you to the angels with my golden elixir." Perez also claimed Tanzler once told him that he would kill Elena if necessary to fulfill his destiny. The Poison Confession letter article was also cited by historian David L. Sloan on episode 44 of the Night America podcast.
If you like that, then check out our Patreon, where for just $5 a month you get access to exclusive shows like Real Monsters and Playing with Bones with Amy Rose, along with early access to all our minisodes and ad-free access to the Weekend Update and It's Alive! Not convinced yet? Well, head on over now and have 7 days on us. That's a 7-day free trial for all new members. That's It's Alive Pod on Patreon. It's Alive! All the guts and go with none of the guilt. See you on Wednesdays, unless you're on Patreon when you get us all week long.